First contact skeptics. Captain Maya Chen stood at the observation deck of the UES Horizon, watching as Earth shrank to a pale blue dot behind them. After 15 years in the United Earth Space Force, she thought she'd seen everything. The Martian Rebellion, the Europa incident, the Titan mining disaster. She'd been there for it all. But today it was different. Today, humanity wasn't alone. Captain, the Valtteri delegation requests your presence in Conference Room Alpha. Her XO, Lieutenant Commander Jackson, said from behind her. Maya nodded, straightening her midnight blue uniform adorned with the silver insignia of Earth Command. "How are our guests finding our accommodations?" she asked, falling into step beside him. "They find our gravity charmingly robust, and our atmosphere quaintly oxygen-rich," Jackson replied with a hint of amusement. "But otherwise, they seem comfortable." The Valtteri Federation had arrived 3 months ago, their massive ships appearing suddenly at the edge of our solar system. They came peacefully, a coalition of 7 different species united by technology and trade. Their arrival had changed everything overnight. Humanity went from wondering if they were alone in the universe to being the newest potential member of a galactic community. As the doors to Conference Room Alpha slid open, Maya took a deep breath. Inside, 5 representatives of the Valtteri sat around the circular table. They varied dramatically in appearance, from the almost human Tellarans with their silver skin and 6-fingered hands to the jellyfish-like Murans, who floated in specially designed anti-gravity suits. Captain Chen greeted Ambassador Seleth, the Tellaran who served as the delegation's spokesperson. His voice was melodic, almost hypnotic. "Please join us. We were just discussing some of your planet's more colorful cultural elements." Maya took her seat, noticing the holographic display in the center of the table showing images of ancient human artifacts, cave paintings, medieval tapestries, and modern films, all depicting various supernatural creatures. "Your species has a remarkable preoccupation with imaginary monsters," said Creel, a reptilian Silveri whose scales shifted between shades of green when he spoke, "particularly these ghosts and demons. Fascinating psychological constructs." Maya felt a familiar defensiveness rise within her. During the 3 months of diplomatic exchange, the Valtteri had been politely but consistently condescending about human superstitions. "Every sentient species creates myths to explain the unknown," she replied diplomatically. "I'm sure the Valtteri had similar stories before you achieved your current technological understanding." A ripple of what she recognized as laughter moved through the Muran diplomat's translucent body. "The difference, Captain, is that we outgrew such fictions as our reason evolved. Yet humans in your modern era, with space travel and quantum computing, still report encounters with these supernatural entities." Maya thought of her grandfather then, Lieutenant General William Chen, hero of the Mars campaign, and a man of impeccable logic and reason. Until the Titan mission, he'd returned change, his once steady hands trembling as he filled journal after journal with strange symbols and warnings. The official diagnosis was PTSD with psychotic features, but Maya had never quite believed it. "Cultural traditions die hard," she said instead. "But we're here to discuss the joint expedition, not human folklore." Ambassador Seleth nodded, his silver features catching the light. "Indeed, the anomaly at the edge of your Kuiper belt presents an opportunity for meaningful scientific cooperation. Our sensors detected technology that doesn't match any known Valtteri signature." The holographic display shifted to show a strange object floating in the darkness of space, something that looked almost like a ship, but with an organic quality to its design, covered in strange markings that seemed to shift when viewed directly. "We depart tomorrow," Maya said. "The Horizon is fully equipped for deep space exploration, and we've prepared quarters for your science team." "Excellent," Seleth replied. "Though I must ask, are your crew prepared for the possibility that this may be another intelligent species, one unknown to even the Valtteri?" Maya's thoughts drifted again to her grandfather's journals, hidden in her personal quarters. the strange drawings that looked eerily similar to the markings on the anomalous object. His final warning. They're out there, Maya, waiting in the dark between stars. And when they return, our legends will be all that save us. My crew is prepared for anything, Ambassador, she said firmly. 3 weeks later, Maya stood on the bridge of the horizon as they approached the mysterious object. Up close, it was even more unsettling. A massive structure that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, curved in ways that hurt the eyes to follow. Sensor analysis, she asked her science officer. Lieutenant Patel shook his head. Still inconclusive, Captain. It's like the object exists partially in another dimension. We're getting readings of materials that shouldn't be stable in our universe. The Volteri scientists had grown increasingly agitated as they approached. What had begun as academic curiosity had shifted to something that looked almost like fear. Captain, called Communications Officer Chen Lai. Ambassador Seleth is requesting your presence in Science Lab 2. He says it's urgent. Maya found Seleth and 3 other Volteri scientists huddled around a display showing magnified images of the object's surface markings. The atmosphere in the room was tense. Captain Chen. Seleth's voice had lost its melodic quality. We've made a discovery that concerns us. He gestured to the screen. These symbols, they appear in Volteri historical records, ancient warnings from the pre-Federation era. All 7 of our species have variations of these markings in our earliest archaeological findings. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She'd seen these exact patterns before, meticulously copied in her grandfather's shaking handwriting. What do they mean? She asked, though something in her already knew the answer. They are warnings, said Creel, his scales now a pale, sickly blue. About entities that existed before our civilizations, beings that fed on sentient life and were eventually imprisoned or driven away. Imprisoned where? Maya asked. In the spaces between galaxies, Seleth replied. In ships exactly like this one. Before Maya could respond, the ship's alarm blared. Captain to the bridge. Jackson's voice came over the comm. We're detecting movement from the object. As Maya rushed back to the bridge, the entirety of the horizon shuddered violently. On the main view screen, the dark object was no longer dormant. Lights flickered across its surface, and portions of it seemed to be unfurling like the petals of some monstrous flower. It's activating, whispered Patel. Captain, I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with life. Impossible, said one of the Volteri scientists who had followed Maya to the bridge. The legends say they've been dormant for millions of years. Maya thought of her grandfather again, of the night before he died, when he gripped her hands with surprising strength. They called me crazy, he'd whispered, but I saw them, Maya, and they saw me. The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. Captain, said Jackson, his voice unnaturally calm. We're being pulled in. As the horizon was drawn inexorably toward the awakening vessel, Maya made a decision. Lieutenant Lai, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made contact with. She paused, looking at the terrified faces of the Volteri. Tell them we've confirmed the existence of entities previously relegated to human mythology. And tell them to prepare. The Volteri ambassador stared at her, silver face reflecting the eerie lights from the ancient ship now filling their view screen. You knew, he said. Humanity has encountered them before. Maya nodded slowly. We didn't just create stories to explain the unknown, Ambassador. We created them to remember, to warn future generations. As they crossed the threshold into the alien vessel, Maya reached into her pocket and touched her grandfather's journal. The myths were always true, she said softly. We just stopped believing them. The darkness of the ancient ship enveloped the horizon, and for the first time since their arrival, Maya saw genuine respect in the eyes of the Volteri. But there was no time to appreciate the irony. Something was awakening in the darkness ahead, something that had haunted the collective nightmares of both humans and the Volteri for millennia. And now they would face it together. The awakening truth. The interior of the ancient vessel defied conventional physics. Corridors stretched and contracted as if breathing. Surfaces rippled beneath their touch. The joint human-Volteri exploration team moved cautiously through the living architecture, weapons drawn but seemingly useless against the very fabric of this place. "These structures," whispered Dr. Eliza Santos, the Horizon's xenobiologist, "they're responding to our presence, almost like antibodies reacting to an invasion." Captain Maya Chen nodded, her tactical light cutting through swirling mists that seemed to form faces before dissolving again. She'd insisted on leading the exploration team herself, against the protests of both her XO and the Volteri representatives. But this mission had become personal the moment she recognized the symbols from her grandfather's journals. "Ambassador Seleth," she called softly to the Teleran, who was examining etchings along a pulsating wall. "You said all 7 Volteri species had warnings about these entities. What exactly were we warned against?" Seleth's silver skin had dulled to an ashen gray, his 6-fingered hands trembling slightly as he traced the symbols. "We called them by different names, but the essence was the same. Creatures that feed on consciousness itself. They don't just consume bodies, they devour minds, memories, even what some might call souls." "Ghosts," said Lieutenant Patel quietly. "Demons, vampires. Every human culture has stories about creatures that feed on life essence." "Not stories," corrected Creel, the so-very scientist whose scales had turned almost white with fear. "Warnings passed down through generations, becoming distorted over millennia." Maya unzipped a pocket on her uniform and withdrew a small worn notebook, her grandfather's journal. "My grandfather encountered something on Titan," she said, opening it to pages filled with the same symbols that surrounded them now. "The official report said his team found nothing but ice and rock. But before he died, he told me they found a fragment of a ship like this one, and something inside it." Woke up. A low, vibrating hum filled the air, making their teeth ache and their vision blur. The walls around them pulsed faster. "Captain," came Jackson's voice through her comm unit, distorted but urgent. "Something's happening to the Horizon. The hull integrity is." His voice cut off in a burst of static. "We need to move," Maya ordered. "Whatever's happening, we can't be trapped in here." They hurried deeper into the vessel, following a path that seemed to lead toward its center. The architecture became more organic, less mechanical, arches that resembled rib cages, floors that felt like flesh beneath their boots. And everywhere, the symbols from her grandfather's journal, glowing with an internal light that hadn't been visible before. "Captain," whispered Dr. Santos, pointing ahead. "Look." The corridor opened into a vast chamber that defied the apparent size of the vessel. It stretched for what seemed like miles, its ceiling lost in darkness above. And suspended throughout the space were transparent pods, thousands upon thousands of them, each containing a shape that was almost humanoid but wrong in subtle, nightmarish ways. "The sleepers," breathed Seleth, just as the legends described. Maya approached the nearest pod. Inside floated a creature with a vaguely humanoid form, but with limbs too long and numerous, a face composed of shifting features that never settled into anything recognizable. As she watched, its eyes opened, not 2, but dozens of them, blinking into awareness across its fluid body. "They're waking up," Creel said, his voice a terrified hiss. "All of them." The pods nearest to them began to crack, viscous fluid seeping through fractures in their transparent surfaces. One by one, ancient eyes focused on the intruders. "Back to the entrance," Maya ordered. "Now." They turned to retreat, but the corridor they'd followed had sealed itself, the walls fusing together like healing flesh. They were trapped. "There's no escape," Seleth said, his voice hollow. The legends were clear about this. Once awakened, they consume all sentient life within reach. Maya felt an odd calm settle over her as she faced the hatching horrors. She thought again of her grandfather, of the strange treatments he'd insisted she undergo as a child. Vaccines, he'd called them, though no doctor had prescribed them. Gene therapy to protect against threats no one else believed in. Maybe for you, she said quietly, reaching for her sidearm. But my grandfather prepared me. As the first of the creatures emerged from its pod, Maya felt something shift within her DNA, dormant genes activating, just as her grandfather had promised they would. A warmth spread through her body, her vision sharpening, her muscles flooding with strange energy. The creature lunged at Seleth, its form rippling into a nightmarish approximation of the Telleran's own shape. Maya moved with inhuman speed, placing herself between the ambassador and the entity. When it touched her, it shrieked, a sound that existed partly in normal space and partly somewhere else, tearing at the fabric of reality. "Captain," Dr. Santos cried out. "Your skin." Maya glanced down to see her flesh glowing with the same symbols that covered the walls, her grandfather's vaccines manifesting as a defense against these ancient predators. "Lieutenant General Chen didn't just discover these things on Titan," she said, understanding blooming within her as genetic memory unlocked. "He discovered the truth about humanity." She faced the creatures with newfound confidence. "We weren't just telling stories all these millennia. We were remembering our purpose." As more pods cracked open around them, Maya felt knowledge flooding into her consciousness. Knowledge embedded in her DNA by ancestors she hadn't known existed. Humanity hadn't evolved naturally on Earth. They had been engineered, seeded there by a long-vanished race, designed specifically to combat these ancient horrors. "The symbols," she said to her terrified companions. "Copy them onto yourselves. They're not just warnings. They're weapons." Using emergency markers from their kits, the humans began drawing the symbols on their exposed skin, helping the Volteri do the same. When the next wave of creatures attacked, they recoiled from the marked individuals. "What are we?" asked Patel as he finished a complex sigil on his forearm that somehow felt as familiar as his own name. "Guardians," Maya replied, the word coming from some deep genetic memory. Created to look like prey but designed to be predators. The last defense against these things if they ever broke free. The ship shuddered around them, and the comm unit suddenly burst back to life. "Captain." Jackson's voice was clearer now. "We've managed to reverse the tractor beam. Whatever you did in there destabilized their systems. We can pull you out, but we have minutes at most before the vessel collapses." Maya made a quick decision. "Ambassador Seleth, take your people and my crew back to the horizon. I need to ensure these things don't escape." "What are you planning?" Seleth asked, his silver features showing genuine concern for perhaps the first time. Maya held up her grandfather's journal. "There's a self-destruct sequence hidden in these symbols. I can activate it, but someone needs to stay behind to complete the process." "I'll stay with you," offered Dr. Santos. Maya shook her head. "The genetic modifications my grandfather gave me make me resistant to their influence. Anyone else would be compromised before they could finish." After a moment of hesitation, Seleth placed a six-fingered hand on Maya's shoulder. "Gesture of respect. Your grandfather was right to prepare you, Captain Chen. The Volteri Federation has been wrong about many things regarding humanity. Your superstitions were wisdom we had forgotten." As the others retreated, guided by the glowing symbols Maya had taught them to draw, she turned to face the ancient chamber. The creatures were regrouping, their forms shifting and merging as they sensed her intentions. With steady hands, Maya began tracing specific sequences from her grandfather's journal onto the pulsating walls. Each completed symbol caused the vessel to shudder more violently. The creatures shrieked and rushed toward her, but couldn't approach the glowing patterns of her skin. "Captain, we've got the others." Jackson's voice came through the comm. "You need to get out now." "Not yet," Maya replied, completing another sequence. The walls were beginning to crack, dark energy leaking through. Just a few more symbols. She worked methodically, ignoring the chaos erupting around her as the ancient predators realized their prison was becoming their tomb. With each symbol she activated, more of her genetic memory unlocked, showing her glimpses of the ancient race that had created humanity, who had fought these entities to near extinction before succumbing themselves. As she activated the final symbol, a path suddenly opened in the writhing mass of creatures, a corridor leading back toward the horizon's docking point. Without hesitation, Maya ran, the collapsing vessel disintegrating behind her. She reached the airlock just as it was about to seal, diving through as Lieutenant Patel and Dr. Santos pulled her to safety. Moments later, the horizon broke free, engines straining as they put distance between themselves and the ancient vessel. On the bridge view screen, they watched as the nightmare ship imploded, folding in on itself until it vanished in a flash of impossible colors, leaving nothing behind. Maya felt the genetic enhancements receding, her body returning to normal as the immediate threat passed. But the knowledge remained, the truth about humanity's origins and purpose. "What happens now?" asked Ambassador Seleth, who had insisted on remaining on the bridge during their escape. Maya looked at the stars visible through the view screen. Somewhere out there were more of these prison ships, more ancient horrors waiting to wake. "Now," she said, "the Volteri Federation and Earth form a real alliance, not based on your technology or our resources, but on a shared enemy and a shared history we'd both forgotten." Seleth's silver skin regained some of its luster as he nodded. "And perhaps we have much to learn from humans after all. Your ghost stories preserve knowledge my people lost millennia ago." As the horizon set course for Earth, Maya thought of her grandfather. He'd died believing no one would ever understand what he'd discovered, what he'd sacrificed to protect humanity. But he prepared her anyway, trusting that someday the truth would emerge. She placed her hand on the worn journal, feeling the connection to him and to the unknown ancestors who had engineered humanity for this purpose. "The next time someone tells you a ghost story," she said to the assembled bridge crew, "human and alien alike, listen carefully. It might just save your life." In the darkness between stars, other ancient vessels drifted, waiting. But for the first time in millions of years, something was waiting for them too. Descendants of their ancient enemies, carrying mornings disguised as myths and DNA encoded with forgotten weapons. Humanity had been dismissed as superstitious, primitive, and naive. But as the Volteri now understood, those primitive beliefs had preserved the knowledge needed to face the awakening darkness. What looked like weakness had been strength all along. And in the vast library of the Volteri Federation, alongside technical manuals and scientific journals, they would now add a new section: the collected folklore and mythology of Earth, no longer dismissed as fiction, but studied as the survival guides they had always been.